but I still held unto my faith even in the shelter. And in the shelter, God still showed me favor.
Rebuilding your life after loss is not easy, but with a new perspective, you can give yourself permission to live again. Hello, my name is Dakota Kimball, and I welcome you to my podcast, A Widow's Perspective. When a woman gets married, whether it's a big or small wedding, it is the most exciting, life-changing event of her life. We look in the eyes of our intended and recite these vows: to have and to hold, from this day forward, from better for worse, for richer for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until parted by death. It is with the intent that our union will last forever. However, according to a report released by the CDC in 2021, 43% of first marriages end in separation or divorce within 15 years. Today, my guests and I will discuss life after divorce. Minister Vernita Ware has a genuine love for God, her family, and the work of the ministry. Born in the Midwest and raised in New York, Vernita had a Christian foundation that sustained her throughout her life and guided her in being the proud mother of 4 beautiful ladies and the grandmother of 5. Minister Ware has a foundation, Still a Rose Foundation, which is designed to facilitate workshops, conferences, and even one-on-one ministerial events for women worldwide. Minister Vernita held her first conference in 2014. The conference success has encouraged her to continue hosting and accepting engagements in states as far as Hawaii. In addition to Still a Rose Foundation events, Minister Ware also has a personal interest in supporting the Kidney and Lymphoma Foundation. Minister Vernita believes that a beautiful rose is still a rose. It can be restored even in the toughest situations. Welcome, Vernita Ware. How are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. So, why did you start Still a Rose?
So I started Still a Rose because I was going through a difficult time in my life, actually a divorce. It was after a divorce. And so I started attending a new local church. And so they asked me, after I'd been there a while, if I would be the women's ministry, over the women's ministry department. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm dealing with issues. I'm trying to get over this divorce. I haven't gotten over this. I have so much stuff going on within me. How can I minister to other women? But of course, the way I was raised, you say yes to the pastor when you're asked to do something. So I said yes, and I took it on. And so I'm thinking to myself, and I'm praying like, God, how can I do this? What can I tell them? I failed at this. I failed at this marriage. So what do I have to tell these ladies? I'm hurt, I'm broken, I'm shamed, I'm embarrassed. What do I have to tell them? And the Spirit spoke to me, and He showed me a rose and started to speak to me. He said, when a rose, when it's beautiful, everyone loves that rose, and they just, admired looking at it. And then He began to tell me that when a rose starts to wilt, when it starts to deteriorate, people will just take that rose and toss it aside, discard it, because they no longer want it. It's damaged now. Right. But He said, but if you will allow me, like a rose, like a gardener would do a rose, I can tend to you. I can snip the ends. I can repot you if you're outside. I'm the gardener. I can tend around the ground and bring you back to your true beauty if you will allow me to do this. I can mend your broken heart. I can wipe those tears away. I can reduce that shame. I can take that shame away if you will allow me to do that. So this is where that came from. So in me ministering to other women, the Lord was ministering to me as well. I was healing as well. So that's where Still a Rose was derived from. When He showed me that rose and what He could do with the rose, with this rose, if I would allow Him to. And then as well, I learned that a rose is the queen of all of the flowers. So He was calling me a queen as well.
Amen. That's wonderful. So I want to just go back a little bit. How long were you married?
I was married for 24 years.
You were married for 24 years. Yes. And where did you meet?
We met in Mississippi visiting my grandmother,
Okay.
and she thought he was a great guy. She thought he was more of a great guy than I did at the time.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay. And you were married for 24 years?
Yes.
Okay. So so during the 24 years, was it all good at the beginning?
I think maybe the first year was, if there is a perfect marriage, was perfect. And we had our first child, I guess 14 months after we were married, we had our first child. And then infidelity started, with him stepping out, and it continued. But, I stayed there and I tried, because I married very young, so young that my mother had to sign for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so very young.
Okay.
So I stayed there and I tried to work it out, because I had this picture in my head of what a marriage should be, and I wanted that marriage to be there. So I wanted to continue to work, and then I didn't want to see my children, in my head I'm thinking I don't want them fatherless. Not thinking at the time that God can be their father as well.
Right.
If I allow him to. So that's when it all started. And so years later, probably around, I guess, close to 24 years, the Lord has shown me a vision. And in this vision, it was as if a storm was coming. And we could sense that a really bad storm was coming. And I told my family, said, let's just all gather around and just pray. I said, we're going to go. If it's going to take us out, we're going to go together. And so the storm came, and when I came to, we were riding, it was like on top of this huge wave, very high wave, and I could look down and I could see as the wave began to cease. And when the wave came down, it stood myself and my daughters on the ground. And I looked around, and my husband wasn't there.
Okay.
I was like, where is he? And we looked, and then I could see him way across on the other sides of the water. And so I didn't know what it meant at the time. And I called different friends. I was like, what do you think that meant? And they would say, well, it just means you're going to go through some difficult times, probably in your business, because we owned our own business. Probably in your business, you're going to go through some difficult times. And it still didn't settle with me. So I asked another friend, what do you think? And they were saying basically the same thing. So, but you want me to continue? Okay, to go a little further, he ended up leaving us for someone else, moving in with her, and just left us stranded with nothing, nothing at all. So the girls and we ended up in a shelter, and I can remember in the shelter one night, I was praying, and when I finished praying, one of my daughters said, Mom, do you remember that vision or dream you had? And I said, which one, babe? And she said, the one where, we were in the storm.
Right.
And I said, yeah. So I said that when you trust in God, and I've always trusted him, I experienced my first healing at age 6. So I've always had faith in God.
Right.
And so I trusted God, and I feel like when you really trust him and you depend on him and you know that he's real, and I feel like he warned me that this was coming. But I didn't know how. In a way, when I think about it, sometimes it seemed like I kind of knew, but didn't want to know. We try to hold on to things that we shouldn't be holding on to. But we try to hold on to them. So
I just want to take a step back. So I know you said early on in the marriage there was infidelity.
Right.
So you were raised in the church.
Right.
Okay. Did that have anything to do with you staying in your marriage with the infidelity?
It did, because at one point the church used to teach only one husband, no divorces.
Right.
That's how the church taught. And then another thing was because he was in the ministry, he was a pastor actually.
Oh, okay.
And so then I reported into, after so many times, I reported into the state overseer, and he pretty much, called me and said, okay, I talked to him, so, I think people would pat it on the back and you would, but yeah.
So there was no remorse, no changing behavior.
No change,
okay.
No change.
So when you ended up in the shelter, did you think God failed you?
I never thought God failed me. I've been asked that before, but I never thought he failed me. I was confused.
Okay.
I was confused as to here I am. Why am I here? You know, I love you, God. I don't, you know, but I still held unto my faith even in the shelter. And in the shelter, God still showed me favor. So he didn't really give me a chance to be upset with him or anything. He showed me favor even in the shelter. As small as it may seem, we ended up in a shelter that was like a kitchenette. Because when you see it on television, it's like everyone's thrown into one room. But we end up where we had our own like little suite. You know, so we had so much favor as to when they would get food, they'd knock on our door first to tell me it's there. So it was just so much favor that God showed me, even when I end up getting a job. You know, I hadn't got a paycheck yet. Am I talking too much?
No, you're good.
I hadn't got a paycheck yet, but even when they would take us around to see different apartments, I knew that those weren't where I wanted to raise my daughters at. So, but those were the ones that the state would, you know, help you with. But I still had faith. I went and I looked in a newspaper and I found an apartment, and I asked if the van could take me there. And first they said no, but then the next day they said yes. So I went to the apartment and I asked the person in charge there, you know, if they would, the manager, if I said, I just started a job, but I don't have the monies right now. But if you would let me in here, I'll be certain that you get the down payment in the first month's rent. And certainly she held the apartment for me.
Wonderful.
So, and that apartment was so convenient. The laundromat was there, the grocery store. But I'm saying all this to say that when we go through situations, as difficult as they are, and as hurt as we are, if we can find the strength in us somewhere just to hold on to God, to continue to have faith in God, He's going to do it for us.
Absolutely.
It may not come, I think I heard someone say it today, it may not come when we want it, but He's going to be there.
Absolutely. Now, I don't think I've ever shared with you that I used to work in a shelter in New York City. And one of the things that I remembered was because when we think of people in the shelter, we have a different perception of the type of people that come to the shelter. But I remember women coming to the shelter, and I don't know the percentage, but I remember we had women that came because their husbands left them. And they had no other option. That was their only option to live. And I remembered those mothers being so protective of their children. And not that no one else wasn't, but there was just a different type of protection. How did that experience in the shelter affect your relationship with your daughters?
Because at that time, well, with the two younger ones, I think they were okay. That's Janita and Jamie. I think they were kind of okay because they were younger, and so we were getting food stamps at that time as well. So I would I give them little extra food stamps to get to buy what they want at the grocery store and all like that, and I get them involved in different activities to keep their mind off of us being in a shelter. I'd stay away a lot. You know, we go different places. You know, away from the shelter, but it didn't affect them as much, you know, staying in shelter. I thought embarrassment. At first it was embarrassment because they would they'd run to the bus stop so that people wouldn't see them leaving the shelter. You know, they'd run real fast that way, you know, from that type of embarrassment. And they didn't tell anyone, you know, and actually I'm thinking now it was a couple other kids that went to school with them, so it was like their group. They never told anyone they were from the shelter, so they would leave together, and in school they would never mention. And what did you learn about you during that experience? Because my thing is, whenever we go, because that's traumatic, what you went through is traumatic experience. So whenever we go through something traumatic, there's still a learning in that. There's still something for us to learn. What did you learn? I learned that God is faithful. First of all, I learned that He's so faithful, and you can trust Him. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. And I learned that people's opinion about me doesn't even matter. You know, because I'm shy as it is, so when people kind of say different things. It used to bother me,
Right.
but it doesn't anymore because God has shown me who I am. I am that beautiful rose. I am a strong person. So I learned my strength through that. Because I would have, years ago, I would have never thought I could have made it on my own.
Okay.
That was the first time me being on my own because I went from my mother's house to my husband's house.
Okay.
So then I came into this unfamiliar world, but I learned my strength.
Okay. Okay. And if you could share something with another woman going through that experience, what would you share?
I would tell her to trust God. Be true to herself. One of the reasons I started Still a Rose was because when I was going through, I just needed somebody that I needed to talk to. That I knew it wouldn't go anyplace else. Sometimes you just need to pour out, and you just need to know that it isn't going anyplace else. It has to be that genuine person that not the one that's gonna say it's confidential, but then when they tell me, don't tell anybody though, but she told me this, don't you tell anybody either. So but I would tell them to trust God. Just trust God, and whatever help you feel like you need, whether you were talking therapy earlier, you get that therapy because you want to be whole.
Right.
You don't want to be walking around, half of yourself.
Right.
You want to be whole. So whatever you deem necessary for yourself, then you do it.
Okay.
But I want you to know that you're strong. I want them to know that God is watching out for them. I want them to know that He has a plan for their life. There's a plan, and you can trust Him.
Wonderful. And what about your daughters? What do you think? Do you ever discuss those times, and what was their takeaway?
I do.
From their experience.
My oldest daughter, I think she still holds on to it. I have to talk to her all the time regarding it.
Okay.
She still holds on to it. The other three, they're pretty well. I was speaking with Janita on yesterday regarding it. She's saying, I guess I must have blocked it all out. I don't know. She said, maybe I need therapy. But she said she's fine though. She said, Mom, but I think the older ones saw it more.
Because they were older.
Right.
And I think sometimes as mothers that we don't realize when we're going through something, our kids are also going through something.
Exactly.
And
Jamie, Jamie said, I think maybe what she does is somebody cross her, that's it.
Right.
That's it. She don't want to have anything else to do with them.
So do you think it affected the way they viewed relationships?
I don't think so because with my girls, I did a lot of praying over them during the whole thing. A lot of praying because I didn't want any of this to attach itself to them. So I did a lot of praying, a lot of talking. I allowed them to talk, tell me your true feelings. What are you feeling? And another thing I did was I never allowed them to you express what you feel about your father, but you don't bash him because it is your father. I never bashed him in front of them because it is their father. Right. So, but I just always tried to keep them covered. And I really don't, I haven't seen any effect where it has hurt.
And you had mentioned that he was in the ministry.
Yes.
He was a pastor. So when you went through this, did you feel that you received support from that community?
Not at all.
No, okay.
I more so felt shunned.
Okay.
Where, they didn't want to affiliate themselves with me as if I had something wrong with me now, since.
And that's a lot of women who are married to people in ministry. When you hear about marriages going awry, that's a common feeling.
Right.
Well, not a feeling, that's a common occurrence, right? So why do you think that happens? Or did you ever think about that or try to figure that out?
I think what I was thinking on it is that sometimes people feel like it's a disease. It might happen to them. That's what I think sometimes from the reactions that I got. They didn't want to associate themselves with me. So.
All right. And did you have to forgive people?
I had to forgive a lot of people.
Okay.
I had the hardest person to forgive was him.
Okay.
You know, it took me a while to really forgive him and to get over it, but I eventually did. So, but church people, I had to forgive them. I can tell you about one incident. It was funny to me, but we had attended a wedding and there was a reception, and so of course, you know, the people know that he isn't around, and so one of the pastors are going to ask my daughter, so where's your father? You know, trying to get in the biz, and Janita said, oh, he's over there. You didn't see him? And then they left. She lied, but you know, he went looking for him, but they knew that we were divorced, so worried.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Right. And you did a great job because, of course, I know your daughters and I know your grandchildren.
Thank you.
And your daughters are all college graduates? So they're all college graduates. Yes. So you raised 4 college graduates.
Right.
And you have how many grandchildren?
5.
5
grandchildren.
Right.
Let's see, 22, 22.
Yes.
22, 14, 10, and 6.
Wonderful. So you came through it.
I came through it.
You made it through the storm.
I came through it.
Yeah.
I came through that storm. It was hard, but God brought me through it. It
Wonderful.
was hard, but He's faithful. He's a faithful God.
And just so you remember when we were younger, there was a song, How I Got Over?
Yes.
Do you ever think about that? How did you make, so if you think about now, when you look at yourself now and think about then, did you think you would be blooming?
No, not at all. Not at all. Definitely not, because there were so many times that I did want to give up. You know? It was tiresome. It was so tiresome, you know, trying to push, and I hid myself, you know, my feelings a lot because I wanted to make sure that my daughters were okay. So I didn't take care of Vernita right away.
Okay.
So there was a lot of hurt there. There's a lot going on with me. And I do think about that a lot. God, you know, how did you do it? You did it, though. You did it.
Yeah.
And I think about it quite a bit, often.
Wow.
I don't know. It was nothing that I could have did on my own.
Wow.
I couldn't have done it
Wow.
on my own.
That's wonderful.
But
and the
God
one
grace.
thing though, so we know you have still a rose, but you're also a designer. You make your own clothes.
Yes, I do.
And you've had your own business at some
Yes.
point making
Yes.
clothes.
Yes.
Right?
And children's clothing.
And
Yes,
children's
I do that
clothing.
as well. Yes.
So you've learned to use your talents and gifts
I did.
and things that you hadn't done within the marriage
Exactly.
that you blossomed
Right.
after the
I
marriage.
did a
That's
little
wonderful.
recording too.
Okay.
But the thing about it, I'm my true self. In the marriage, I felt like I wasn't me.
Okay.
I felt like I knew there was so much more in me when I was married. And now I just feel so alive. I hid
Wonderful.
myself behind him pretty much.
Okay.
But now I feel like I'm alive.
Amen. So I want to thank you for sharing your story with us. Your story is a reminder that we can rise out of dark places, and that we can bloom again.
Yes.
And
Amen.
actually, as I was researching for this episode, I came across a poem by Tupac Shakur.
Oh, okay.
And I would like to read it. And the poem is called The Rose That Grew from Concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's laws wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny, it seems, too, by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else even cared. So I thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So thank you for tuning in to A Widow's Perspective podcast. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you at the next episode.
You have just listened to A Widow's Perspective podcast. Thank you for joining us this week. Follow me on Instagram at Dakota Kimball Official to connect with me and let me know your thoughts on this week's episode. Until next time.